Former Vice President Mike Pence condemned the Biden administration during a Politics and Eggs event in New Hampshire on Wednesday. Pence claimed that today's country is almost unrecognizable compared to the days of the Trump presidency, mentioning the, quote, disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, high inflation, and more. The former vice president warned that things will get worse after President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act earlier this week. Pence claimed the bill will not defeat inflation, stating that Biden and Democrats have poured gasoline on a raging fire that is burning down the American economy.
Our lives have all changed, haven't they, since 2019 in so many different ways. In many ways, today's country is almost unrecognizable to the secure and prosperous days of 2019, just a few short years ago. And following the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan 1 year ago this week, enemies of freedom around the world have been emboldened. The war has broken out with an unconscionable Russian invasion in Ukraine that now has reached its 6th month. North Korea has returned to its menacing threats, and China has returned to its military provocations across the Asia-Pacific. Let me say a word about Afghanistan and that heartbreaking retreat that took place a year ago. To those of you in this room or those that might be looking on who wore the uniform over the past 20 years, who served in Afghanistan, let me say this. Nothing of that disastrous withdrawal will ever diminish your service to America or the sacrifice of our fallen over the last 20 years defending our freedom. And we thank you. And closer to home, I don't hardly have to tell you, inflation at a 40-year high, gasoline prices through the roof, the worst border crisis in American history. Our once booming economy has been brought to a screeching halt. Wages are plummeting, crime is skyrocketing, and the national debt is piling up by the day. And sadly, things are poised only to get worse. Yesterday, President Biden, with great fanfare in the East Room at the White House, signed what was called the Inflation Reduction Act, a massive $740 billion spending bill with more taxes, more spending, and the left's radical climate agenda built in it. At a time when we see Americans struggling with the cost of energy, they're continuing to push their radical green agenda. And at a time that our economy seems poised to collapse into a recession, Democrats have actually raised taxes on job creators and businesses all across this country, ultimately impacting consumers. I mean, I don't know if you've seen on the internet, but years ago it was President Obama who said famously, the last thing you ever want to do in a recession is raise taxes. But that's exactly what Joe Biden and the Democrats in Congress have done. I think in a very real sense they poured gasoline on a raging fire that's burning down the American economy. And truthfully, they'll not only not defeat inflation, but likely, just like the $1.9 trillion COVID bill that they passed in the early months of this administration, it's very likely another near $1 trillion in spending will once again reignite a growth in inflation in this country to the hardship of American families. In the midst of all of that, I'm sure you all heard, they've also authorized the hiring of 87,000 IRS agents. You know, when Ronald Reagan spoke in 1964 about a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital who thought they could plan our lives better than we could plan them for ourselves, I think you could scarcely imagine the big government socialism or the left-wing climate agenda that's being implemented in Washington, D.C. today.